The work of Gregory Fromenteau is whimsical. One glance is all you need in order to know that you've entered another world. Fish aren't that big. Whales can't fly. But there's a lot more to this artwork than just the choice of subject. So let's look at just a few of the things that make Fromenteau's work so distinctly and potently magical. One of the first things I noticed when I look at these fantastic images, and I mean that quite literally, was the line weight and the color. The method is as airy and light as the subjects themselves. For as much as I like to tout artists using primarily midtones and being sparing with their shadows and their highlights, Fromenteau very much uses white as the base for these paintings. We don't get deep and dark shadow. We get a thin wash of midtone over white paper, which lightens the colors up, makes them light and frothy. The more intensely saturated colors are washed out, and it leaves behind a heavy texture. The lines are also very light and single weight, rather than the varied weight line typically used in inking that you would get with a brush. The lines here maintain the same width throughout, taking the burden almost entirely off the inks to provide shadows and leaving that responsibility to the paint, with the exception of a little bit of hatching. This is very reminiscent of the color, the value, the line, and the texture of classic ukiyo-e Japanese woodblock printing, which you saw mostly in the 18th and 19th centuries from Japanese artists like Hiroshige or Hokusai, the last of which who famously created the Great Wave image that you'll see on random people's tattoos and MacBook covers. But aside from just the style and the method, Fromenteau is also using scale to great effect. The animals are almost always depicted much larger than they actually are. At least I hope so. The only way that we, as the viewer, recognize that this is a giant goldfish is by comparison with other objects. But this sense of dramatic scale is intensified by a technique very similar to what gets referred to as greebling or the Greeble effect. This was coined by special effects artists, and it's the technique you'll see in movies like Star Wars, adding lots of tiny details to make a small model spaceship seem like an enormous city-sized craft. Fromenteau is applying hordes of small detail to these ships and the buildings to increase our sense of their size. The detail is expertly suggested rather than shown, relying on well-placed lines to give the sense of a surface and its micro detail, rather than painstakingly drawing each component. But none of these details all pieced together are the reason that people glean so much joy from the work of Gregory Fromenteau. The heart of that reason, I think, is found in the clouds that hedge around so many of these pieces, or the fog that obscures distant landscapes. It's a principle also to be found in the very concept of these animals flying high above the earth. This artist has succeeded in capturing, containing, and expressing the very notion of detachment, a perfect focus on a moment of absolute freedom. It's no coincidence, I think, that most of Fromenteau's illustrations give us a journey. Each animal set up as a vehicle and as a companion, leading us from one place to another. As we have seen in countless stories, like those of Tolkien, we delight in the journey, traveling to the distant and to the unknown. I know of no artist who more fully expresses that sensation than we are able to see in a giant sea turtle carrying a wooden sailing ship on its back.